Neighbors read their contract. This is a story from a year ago involving my neighbors, thought it was worth a share. My neighbors were selling their house and had been screwed left and right by the buyers. For background, neighbor learned he was being relocated to another city. Partner and him started working out the details, and their house went on the market and was quickly closed with a deal pending. If you've never bought a house before, closing can take between 45 and 60 days with things like inspections, necessary repairs, etc. So they started down that process. Their buyers came off sweet but quickly turned sour. The people they hired to inspect my neighbor's house were family members, and they came away with a huge sheet of things to be repaired or to knock down the price. Many of those repairs they demanded be fixed at my neighbor's expense by a different contractor, despite the fact that my neighbor is a contractor himself. Then, they started sending people to house unannounced, totally illegal, and showing up to the property on their own, trespassing. The nail in the coffin was that my neighbors had been strung along for a full 10 days longer than they should have been because the buyers kept threatening to back out of the sale, despite having already signed paperwork without their knowledge. All very muddy. As part of the contract, the buyers said that needed to take all personal property and all debris, claiming a financial penalty for cleanup if there was anything on the property that the buyers thought counted. So my neighbors had spent a lot of time cleaning out yard debris, multiple dump runs, etc. But as the purchase was almost finalized and all this shitty stuff was happening, they had an idea. While one is a contractor, the other works in legal and has for 10 years. She took to the contract and local home purchase regulations for the definition of personal property. Turns out that besides the obvious, light bulbs also count. They went through and removed every light bulb they could find, except ones that were installed as part of fixtures. The sellers had to purchase nearly $200 worth of light bulbs as part of their move-in, which they did not discover until they showed up with moving trucks. Sometimes the little "fuck you" is the most satisfying. Just an aside, what counts as personal property varies from state to state, if this story inspires anyone. Fun fact, in the state of NC, the stove counts as part of the real estate but the refrigerator is considered personal property. I want to do this in the rental I'm being forced to leave. The in-wall AC units too. Since we purchased them and never invoiced the landlord for it. So are these buyers your new neighbors now, and if so, how have your interactions, if any, with them been so far? Many of those repairs they demanded be fixed at my neighbor's expense by a different contractor, despite the fact that my neighbor is a contractor himself. Pure bullshit, from they buyers, not op. Buyers can point out repairs to be fixed but they can't select the contractor as they are not paying. They can then inspect the repairs. Also, the seller has the right to say no to any of the repairs, then it is in the buyer's ballpark to decide if they want to go through with the sale. I went the other way with a landlord that threw me out to give the house to his kid, and superglued about 20 light bulbs into their sockets. They still worked fine, so I got my deposit back, but I like to think that months from then, as bulbs start to blow, he had the realization that he's going to have to replace and rewire all those fixtures. No offense to sellers, but as my dad told me one day long ago, why would you sign something that you didn't read and fully understand? When my parents moved into their current house, the previous owners had taken the gas fireplace, ceiling roses and curtain rails. They weren't on the list of included property, so they took them. Mad. When they submitted the list of things to be repaired, the owners could have just said no on anything or all of it. Then the buyers can pull out of the sale if it is still under contingency. I had a buyer give me a list of 10 items for a condo. I said no to 8, pointing out their inspector had caused the damage to one of the items, and agreed to 2. I told my agent they could pull out of the sale, but I was not negotiating. They still bought. As first-time buyers who were screwed over by their agent, sellers, and contractor provided by agent, this makes me feel good. Love our house, but there were things missed or things that needed to be fixed or price reduced before buying. Live and learned, but fuck those sellers. Karma never forgets. There's no schadenfreude in this post. Those buyers are pieces of shit and got barely a slap on the wrist for doing so. My previous owner left over $30,000 worth of stuff here. And my landlord wanted me to go after her for $1,500 for a new pool pump. She was considering leaving $50,000 worth of stuff. We're still friends. When we moved years ago, the new owners of our old place said we had to take everything. So we took the approximately $700 worth of firewood to our new house and burned it, even though the fire was useless and we had central heating. Should have stuck a couple frozen shrimp in the curtain rods around the house. Where was their reagent in all this? Someone sleeping at the wheel ZZ. Parents had this after a big move to the other end of the UK. Their buyer tried to sue after they left sheds, spare wood, and even plants and trees. Their solicitor copied him into his reply. All of the items listed were included in the sale of the property, i.e., see all that shit you don't want? That's yours now. You bought it. Amazing really how people are with house buying. When living at home I witnessed buyers wanting work done on the house before they moved in, and paid for, whilst the price knocking down because they may have to paint a wall. When we moved into our place 25 years ago, the previous tenants left a full pool table. We finally gave it away several months later, but it was tough going. I did a similar thing on a much smaller scale. I was renting a room at an extended stay while I worked out of town. The two lights in the bathroom both went out within a day of each other, so I told the front desk I didn't have lights in the bathroom. They told me they would have to order some more because they were out. You would think they'd always have some on hand. A couple days went by and I never heard anything, and maintenance never came by my room, so I took it upon myself to remove the bulbs and order some new ones. They were a specific model with a ballast built into the bulb. When I finally left months later, I removed the bulbs I had bought myself and replaced them with the burnt-out bulbs. That actually seems pretty mild compared to what they put the neighbors through. If she worked in legal, why did she agree to a house sale with such a shitty contract in the first place? In Germany it's a normal thing while renting an apartment, no bulb sockets, no bulbs, no light fixtures as well. Mine had bare wires with a tape on it. Almost as just billed by developer sad face. My understanding is light fixtures, doorknobs, vent covers all can be considered personal property. The first house my parents bought was a bank foreclosure. The previous owners removed all the light fixtures and all the landscaping, except for 3 oak trees that were too big to move. Why didn't they let the buyers back out and sell to somebody else? Also, it looks strange to me that the house went off the market before it was sold. A little advice, watch your back with the new neighbors. It sounds like they will be a major pitter. When my mom was selling her house, her bargaining chip was an electric fireplace. For context, it was in a room that was an addition and was tiled, so it got colder than the rest of the house. She also didn't disclose that she thought about leaving it. They kept going back and forth about if they wanted the fireplace or not, ended up saying it was a bonus. When the family closed and sent inspectors, they too also said removal of excessive furniture, property, and even mentioned that the fireplace needed a tile or 2 fixed. Counter offered to pay more if she fixed it. She did not want to fix it and was happy with the original offer. She ended up taking the £1,000 electric fireplace to Florida out of spite. This reminds me of a movie I saw about 30 years ago. A family bought a house, and when they went to move in, they discovered the sellers took a whole lot of stuff, including the kitchen counters and cupboards. They even took the stairs needed to go upstairs. I think it was Moving with Richard Pryor. My first house was a foreclosure. When the previous owners moved out, they took every single doorknob, among other things. So they ended up having to pay for another contractor or reduce the sale price, and went MC and stung them for $200. Would have been better to cancel the sale and put it on the market for someone else. As the yard had now been cleaned up, probably could have gotten a higher price for it. Green Loctite, everything that has a fastener. Everything. Oh god, my friend did this about 20 years ago. Had a huge pain in the ass buyer who was like this all the way through, and, on completion day when everything would go through, refused until X and Y was done, etc. etc. My friend basically went through the house and removed every light bulb, light switch, cupboard doorknob, door handle. If it wasn't bolted down or welded on, he took it. My nan and granddad sold a house about 25 years ago. At the last minute the buyer dropped her offer by £10,000 knowing that it would have to be accepted. My nan and granddad were moving to their new house in a few days. Those few days were spent completely ripping the place apart. Carpets were being torn up off the floor. Radiators were taken off the wall. Fitted blinds were stripped down. Whatever could be ripped out, was. A nice little fuck you to the buyer. Sounds like the sellers had a really bad real estate agent. One of my friends loved unique outlet and switch plates. Every single one in her house was of the handcrafted variety. And they were all hers. She had bought her condo new and told the builder to not install any of the plates because she had her own. When she moved, they came with her and there were no replacements because they were never installed in the first place. Like your former neighbor, she too had a difficult buyer who tried to nickel and dime her over everything. She took great glee in taking all the plates off. New owners then had over 20 plates to buy. The realtors involved should have never allowed a family member to be the inspector. The seller not being allowed to do contract work is correct. Everything is supposed to be at arm's length, third party that isn't biased basically. No one told him to read the contact. While I love the delicious irony, this is not malicious compliance. Should have taken the bathroom mirrors, any towel racks, curtain rods, removable shelving, electrical faceplates and probably even the spigots too. I can't imagine trying to fuck over the seller of a house like that. I'm currently buying my first house and the seller is just the sweetest old man. I went through all appropriate channels in every part of this. Sure, my parents came with me for everything so far because I wanted him to, but they have no say in decisions. I had the inspection today and everyone just sat and spoke with the seller while the inspector was doing his thing. It was a genuinely nice experience and I enjoyed getting to know the man who is selling me his home. Tell them as is and foff. Then, they started sending people to house unannounced, totally illegal. In what way? If I tell a handyman to go to an address and measure all the closets, what law is being broken? It's rude, etc., but how is it illegal? Kind of a bummer of an ending. Wow, $200 of bulbs, that showed them face with rolling eyes. I bought $20 light bulbs. When I sold my place, I stripped everything that wasn't a fixture, including the bulbs. Never give stuff away for free. This is funny about them being dicks about the demands for personal property, but the buyers did the right thing using an anal inspector. Little things overlooked can turn into big problems. I spent more time and money fixing shit than I would have hiring a premium inspector, but we went with the realtor's recommended inspector. Big mistake. On the plus side, I learned a lot about how terrible work can be on renovations committed in the 70s. Should have told him to foff and find another buyer. Yup, when we bought our first apartment, our realtor made sure we stipulated that the standard kitchen appliances and all kitchen cabinetry, the light bulbs and the blinds for the windows were all included in the property we were buying. The previous owners still replaced all the light fixtures with a single socket per room and left only the most basic of string blinds in the windows. While that felt anticlimactic, light bulbs $200. I thought he was gonna take the fridge, the oven, the grass, etc. From a quick Google search, it kinda seems like what is personal property is up to interpretation, and that phrase should be avoided in home sale. You should state specifically what you do and don't want. I think legally he would have been in the clear to basically strip the house as much as he wanted. Take the grass. Well, I paid for the grass seed and grew it myself. I'm going to transplant it to my new place. XD. They went through and removed every light bulb they could find. They really unscrewed the buyers. At what point can you tell buyers to F off? Sometimes it just isn't worth the hassle. So, yeah, say a contractor and someone with 10 years in legal let some rando fuck him over and all they did was steal light bulbs. LMAO. Although, $200 in light bulbs is a fuck of a lot of light bulbs. I would have gotten some harassment charges brought up too. Definitely a case for it.